Okay, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really groundbreaking lecture that basically flips decades of nutritional advice on its head. The core idea? It's that sugar, not fat, is the real driver behind our modern health crises. Let's get right into it. So, for the last 30 years or so, we all pretty much followed the rules, right? The official advice was crystal clear. Cut your dietary fat from 40% down to 30%. And, well, we actually did it. But here's the thing. This created a massive paradox, one that public health officials just couldn't seem to explain. You see, as our fat consumption went down, obesity rates didn't just creep up. They absolutely exploded. I mean, look at this chart. The entire curve shifted. On average, we all weigh something like 25 pounds more today than we did 25 years ago. So the advice clearly failed, and that means the real problem was being completely ignored. So what on earth went wrong? Well, to figure it out, we have to start by challenging the most fundamental rule in nutrition. You know the one? A calorie is a calorie. The conventional wisdom has always pointed the finger at two things for obesity: gluttony and sloth. But what if that's totally backwards? Dr. Lustig's argument is that eating more and moving less aren't the causes of obesity at all. They're the symptoms. And here's the key insight. If some biochemical process is forcing your body to store energy as fat, then you are naturally going to feel hungrier and less energetic. See, you're not the perpetrator here. You're the victim of your own biology being hijacked. Okay, so if fat wasn't the problem, and the whole a calorie is a calorie thing is a myth, our investigation has to turn to what replaced that fat in our diet. Where exactly did those extra calories come from? The switch is just so clear when you look at the data. As fat's share of our diet dropped, carbohydrates just rushed in to fill that void. And our consumption of sugar drinks in particular, it just skyrocketed. Soft drinks alone went up 41%. All the numbers are pointing directly to a new prime suspect. And a huge part of that increase came from a brand new ingredient that hit the market back in 1975, high fructose corn syrup. Now, this stuff was sweeter and cheaper than regular sugar, so it started getting outed to everything. The average American now consumes a staggering 63 pounds of it every single year. That's just flooding our bodies with an amount of fructose we've never seen before. And this really is the central claim. All the evidence, you've got the failed low-fat experiment, the huge rise in carbs, and this introduction of super cheap everywhere you look sugar, it all points away from the old villain and directly toward a new one. All right, now for the real core of the argument, the biochemistry. This is where we get to see exactly why some calories are so much worse than others. It all comes down to how the body treats different types of sugar. And here's the absolute key difference. When you eat starch, say from a potato, it breaks down into glucose. And every single cell in your body can use glucose for energy. But fructose, which, by the way, makes up half of both table sugar and high fructose corn syrup, well, it's different. It can only be metabolized in one place, your liver. And that puts this enormous, unique strain on that one single organ. Now, the truly shocking part is what happens next. The way the liver handles fructose is, well, it's nearly identical to how it metabolizes ethanol, alcohol, which we all know is a toxin. For both of them, a big chunk gets converted directly into fat right there in the liver. And this is what leads to inflammation and insulin resistance, which are the direct causes of diseases like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So this leads to a pretty inescapable conclusion. Fructose doesn't give you a buzz, right? That's because it isn't metabolized by your brain. But what it does to your liver, it's virtually the same as alcohol. And in the quantities we're consuming it today, it's basically acting as a chronic liver toxin. So you have to ask, how did a substance that our bodies treat like a toxin end up in nearly every single processed food on the shelf? Well, the answer is a perfect storm of politics, economics, and some seriously misguided public health policy. It was really three key events that created this crisis. It all kicked off in the 70s with this big political push to make food cheap. Then came the invention of high fructose corn syrup, which was even cheaper than sugar. And then, the final nail in the coffin, the official low-fat dietary guidelines. That created a massive demand for a cheap flavor enhancer to replace all the fat that was being taken out. It's a pretty simple fact of food science. When you take the fat out of food, it tastes like cardboard. So to make all these new low-fat products taste good, the food industry had to add flavor back in. And what was their solution? Sugar. And lots of it. So our whole food supply was just quietly altered. setting the stage for the massive health crisis we're dealing with today. Okay, so understanding the problem is one thing, but this argument also gives us a pretty clear path forward. If fructose is the poison, then what's the antidote? It turns out nature actually has a built-in defense mechanism. When you eat a piece of fruit, the fructose comes packaged with its own antidote, fiber. That fiber slows down sugar absorption, which protects your liver from getting totally overwhelmed. The big problem, though, is that modern processed food has had the fibers systematically stripped out of it, for better shelf life and texture. So the advice that comes out of all this isn't about counting calories. It's about protecting your liver and letting your body's natural hormones do their job. And rule number 1 is by far the most important. Get rid of sugared liquids. Just stop drinking them. They deliver a massive fructose hit directly to your liver with zero fiber to slow it down. The other rules, they're all about adding that fiber back, giving your body time to actually feel full, and improving how you handle sugar through exercise. Ultimately, this evidence just completely reframes the entire debate around diet and health. The argument is that the problem isn't about willpower or counting calories, it's about biochemistry. And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final question to think about. If sugar really acts like a chronic toxin, then how should we as a society treat it?